Hello, I'm Peter Houston from the Media Voices podcast. Why should publishers invest in video podcasts? Well, at the Publisher Podcast Summit in June, we recorded a session with Simon Elliott at Crowdfinder Video looking at exactly that question. Simon and I spoke about the benefits of video podcasting for publishers and the role that regular video output plays in audience and revenue growth. Simon also recorded a separate video with some practical tips for video production and editing. You can find a link for that on our landing page. Quick heads up, we recorded in a somewhat challenging audio environment, the Vauxhall Arches. The sound is not the best. We had some great questions from the audience, but unfortunately the audio is proper rubbish. So I'll be popping back up later to ask those questions.
Rolling on screen cameras. You ready when you are?
No one's ever said rolling on all three cameras to me before. This is exciting. Hello, everyone. I've been drafted in to ask Simon some searching questions.
Please don't make them too searching.
As you can tell, I have a perfect face for podcasting, not necessarily video podcasting. So for me, Simon's kind of helped me get over myself and actually look at this properly. There's loads of things publishers care about, but at the moment, growth is probably the hardest one. How does video help me and the rest of the people in the room with growth?
So video podcasts, they're never an end in themselves. They're about bringing in revenue, growing audience. That's what they're for. And what video podcasting can do for you is it gives you a consistent supply of video that you can put not only on YouTube, not only on Spotify, but it also gives you a supply of social video. Cuts from it. I was talking to a lady in the audience earlier who uses cuts from her podcasts on their socials to grow audience. It helps with discovery. It helps with awareness, because that's part of the problem, is being spotted at all, especially now that we're in apparently the era of zero-click searches and things like that. So actually awareness and growth are something that video absolutely helps with. I mean, one of the things I'd say is that if you look at how social posts with video do against social posts without video, they do better. There's a lot of, I think, slightly spurious stats around that say they're 1,200% better. I'm not quite sure that's true, but I would certainly say video posts are 2, maybe 3 or more times more effective than posts without video. What they also do is they introduce people to your brand and the people behind your brand. One of the things that I know publishers are looking for a lot now is to show to their audience that they're authentic, that they're real people. In the AI era, people want to see real people, and video shows them, shows who your people are. So yeah, I think growth and discovery through socials, through being embedded in newsletters, all that kind of thing. You can feed each other with that.
We've spoken before about this, and one of the things that you talked about, which I thought is such a great analogy for a publisher, is this idea of a machine.
Yeah.
So publishers, going back to print, but digital and newsletters and whatever, there's just this process, right? And one of the reasons you said that video didn't work as well for publishers in the past, because they never embraced that idea of the process.
Yeah.
How would you advise someone to get that machine up and running?
I worked in publishing. I worked at Sky News. I do some work at Al Jazeera at the moment. And those places, the publishers to Sky, to Al Jazeera, are all machines for, making their kind of content. And in the case of Al Jazeera, that's video. What publishers need to do is build their own smaller machine, but for making video. Now, that machine is basically the right people and some technology. It doesn't have to be massively expensive, but an investment is needed if you're going to deliver video regularly and consistently. Now, regularly and consistently can be once a month with half a dozen socials. That's fine. That's enough. You're making a regular offer. What I would say is that you just need to put things in place. You need to equip people. So if you bring someone in to do your video for you, make sure that you get them the right software. Riverside, maybe we've talked about already, and make sure that you get them the right laptop. Expecting them to make video on a laptop that barely does page design, it won't do it. You need to just spend a little bit, buy a Mac, not a laptop. That's my strong advice on that.
Boo.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I think just build that machine, get the right people in place, and give them time. The one thing I would say is if you bring video people into a publishing house, just be aware that if you bring someone in who's relatively junior, that's fine, but they're not surrounded by people who know about video. So their learning process will take longer and they won't have people to turn to ask questions to.
No.
So that's an issue.
I had a great conversation yesterday with Rachel Jolly, who's at Cardiff. And we were just talking about what she teaches, or her department teaches journalism students. And if, it's AI and social and all the rest of it. So if you were to bring a young person in, what would your advice be to make sure that they do a good job for you?
Time. Just give them lots and lots of time. Don't expect them to deliver a perfect podcast series within weeks of starting. Give them time, send them on courses, equip them properly. It's the most important thing you can do, because the trouble is, I think quite often, I heard a line yesterday where someone was talking about sales copy and newsletters, and they were saying that it used to get given to the most junior person in the office, and actually it needed to get given to the copywriter because they would deliver the best copy. And I think you just need to sort of recognise, I think the ideal person for publishers is to bring in someone who's not a first jobber or straight out of college, but probably a second jobber who spent some time in a big organisation where they've made video and learned the ropes, because then they can bring that knowledge to you.
How closely does that person need to be integrated with the rest of the team?
I mean, really closely, because they have to reflect the same content. There's no point making a podcast series that's not adjacent to your actual content, your core offer. So you absolutely have to have them built into the team. And also what they can then do is they can learn from the journalistic nous of the people who have been in that vertical. So they should be absolutely tied into it, but they should be supported as well.
Do you think we, as publishers, we forget that we get so focused on the technology that we actually forget, and scared of the technology, that we actually forget it's still journalism, it's still content, it's still whatever market we're in? Do you think we forget that?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to one of the things that really annoys me, I'll be honest, it annoys me, is when people put up content with bad titles and no thumbnails, and yet they'd never put up an article with a poor headline and a bad picture.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the same skill. Journalists have got exactly these skills to sell a story, but they don't wrap that around their video.
Yeah, we spoke about that before. The idea of it's a story. Figure out how you're going to tell the story. You're always, you think, a print bias, obviously, but you think about your headline, you think about your deck, you think about your leads, you think about your first paragraph, whatever it is, you move people through the story. And then when we come a video, and audio to some extent, we just go, and it's
Absolutely.
we just spew it out.
Absolutely. And I would say, actually, funnily enough, that's one of the things, talk about having a hook in a video podcast. And I would say that is the one real difference between video podcasts and audio podcasts, is that you have to work harder at the start of a video podcast. People have less tolerance for the kind of intro that you get in podcasts that I listen to and like, where they talk about how their day was and how have you been and all that sort of stuff. If you ever look at a YouTube retention graph, they're terrifying. I showed them to some reporters who worked for me, and they would put their video up on YouTube and then watch as people clicked and then tuned out, and you could see the line on the graph just going right down. And it was heartbreaking for them. But I said, that's because you've taken a long time to get to the point. You've got to get to the point in video. And I would say most of the podcast doesn't have to change, but just that hook, that idea, that question at the top. So if I was talking about the presentation I've been giving, I would talk about, your packaging matters more than your video. That's a hook. That's a very good one or not. People can decide, but that's what I was trying to do.
It's about bringing people in, right?
Absolutely.
Again, go back to old school journalism. It's the inverted pyramid idea that you've got your most important thing in your first 50 words. And if they don't read the rest of it, then who cares? Well, of course we care, but you know what I mean.
Okay, England.
Do you think there's still this fear? Everyone got burned to some extent by this so-called pivot to video where we all went in on Facebook and got nothing for it. Do you think there's still that fear out there that people are thinking, why am I doing this?
I think there's the fear that history will repeat itself. I mean, people talk about the pivot in publishing and say, and quite often the argument I hear is, we've tried video, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Respectfully, they've tried bad video and they've made video that isn't great, is slow, doesn't have a hook at the top, is badly presented, and then said, well, no one's watching. And I quite often have these conversations where I sit and go, I'll try and look surprised. And it frustrates me because there's all that effort going in, and the storytelling when you get to the meat of these things is great.
Yeah.
But the packaging isn't right. Yeah, I've talked about titles and thumbnails endlessly, but I probably need to see someone about that. But,
It's a good name for an album.
well, I probably need to see someone about that.
No, titles and thumbnails.
Yeah, maybe.
I think one of the things that people forget about the pivot to video, it was actually a pivot to Facebook. And it was Facebook that screwed publishers, not video. And I think that's a big reset, is that idea. I'm not doing this for Facebook. I'm not doing it for LinkedIn. I'm not doing it for TikTok. I'm doing it for my audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Video's about giving the audience more of what they want. Now, you still have that problem. YouTube isn't your platform. You don't own the subscribers. It's not yours. You could lose it if you do copyright strikes, if you have too many copyright strikes. But there are other platforms. There's Vimeo. You could go Vimeo. You could take your audience with you there. So you're always going to have that problem of owned audience. And if you can bring people back to watching video on your own site, I don't think it's a bad thing. But what you won't then get is the possibility of algorithmic discovery and growth that you would get with YouTube and the other socials. So it's that constant balance of, do I want an audience that I kind of own or an audience that I actually own? And that's for publishers to decide. I think there are so many different platforms that video can go to that it doesn't have to be all about YouTube and all about being owned on there. It's just it's a good place.
But is that not about mixing up the actual video content, the podcast, and your socials? Because that's your discovery part, right? So you're putting clips out there, but you're trying to bring them back to your own site.
The great thing about podcasts in the round, and video podcast especially, is that you basically get a twofer. You get discovery and growth from the socials, and you get engagement when they listen or watch your actual podcast. So you've got people spending proper time with the brand, but you've also got the clips from it that can aid your discovery, that can go in your newsletter, that can go on various social platforms, and B2B, and can be on LinkedIn. I'm currently making a series for a brand rather than a magazine. And we've already put 2 out, and they've got much more engagement than their normal written and photo posts. Yep. So they're getting more discovery, they're getting growth out of it, and it's because they've got video. But what I would say specifically to podcasts is, absolutely, it's that twofer, growth and engagement with your brand, time with your brand.
I hate this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Oh, good. I look forward to this.
What's the right length for a video podcast?
Honestly, my ideal length for so I used to get asked this question. I used to run a little newsroom, and people would come to me and talk about the report they were making that day. And it could be about anything. It was a military newsroom, so it could be about, I don't know, an aircraft carrier coming in, and they say, how long do you want the piece? And I'm like, what's it worth? It's the most important question. On merit, what's it worth? If, I don't know, I can't remember whether Chris or I are cutting this this podcast. If I'm dull, he should cut me. Yeah, sorry about that. He should absolutely cut me down, because actually the viewer won't stick around. If you want an actual answer, 25 minutes, 35 minutes. But honestly, what's it worth?
My favourite answer to that question is there's no such thing as a podcast that's too long, just a podcast that's too boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I recorded a video with Simon and I distributed that through my Substack newsletter. And it was interesting that I can't really see through Substack how many people watched the video, but I can see how many people liked the newsletter. And actually, the number of likes went up fairly significantly,
Great.
which is probably all about your face, but
yeah, something like that.
So my last question really is, what's the starting point for someone that's not done this?
So honestly, I've talked a little bit about the technology. One of the main starting points is kind of, it's camera confidence. A lot of people in publishing don't want to be on camera, and they just don't. And I get that, but if you love your brand and you love your magazine, I think it's important to represent it. You know, editors represent magazines when they go to events. It's no different doing it on video. So I would say one kind of, all it is a fancy Teams call. Do it on Riverside or something like that. That's a good technical starting point, and practice, But yeah, start on Riverside. I've done it for a couple of people. Obviously, I'm here commercially, but I'm more than happy to spend 20 minutes talking to someone to give them some pointers as to where they can start. But yeah, the real starting point is have a look at Riverside and get used to it and frame yourself properly. That's quite important.
Frame yourself properly.
Yes.
I mean, the one thing that I got from it was that just do it. And I've heard this about audio, but it's the same story for video. Whatever you record, you don't have to put it out there. You can just sit there and look at it and think, no, I can do this different. I can do this better. You can do trial runs.
You can do trial runs, and if you agonize and wait, it's like writing an article. If you agonize over every full stop, it'll never get out there.
Yeah.
We can all rewrite everything endlessly. It's the same with video. As long as it's okay, one of the most important things about video, you are not trying to make a Marvel movie. You are really not. It's let's just make sure the video is good enough. Let's make sure it's in focus, framed properly, and yeah, that's about it, really.
So now we're at the questions, and the first one is, when working on a video podcast, does Simon do separate edits for video and audio?
Very, very rarely. I think, is this working? Yes, this is working now. Very, very rarely. I think occasionally there will be something where someone refers to something very visual. They will sort of be talking about a book and say, look at the cover. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't work great for audio. So I would nip that out. But other than that, absolutely not, because a good conversation's a good conversation. I really wouldn't worry about it. Edit for video first and then just export an audio file.
The next question came from Rachel Hansford from ACNR. She asked how brutal Simon was in his approach to editing content.
I've always tried to view video and audio as a punter would, as a viewer would, as a listener would. The absolute trick is, I'm watching something. Do I feel my hand drifting towards where I should edit? Then I should probably edit because I'm bored. And you just try and view it like, you edit like a viewer. That's the basic thing. And sometimes you are really brutal, and it feels a bit unfair because someone spent a long time giving a windy answer and you sort of go, yeah, you already said that, and then just cut it out. So view it like a viewer, be as brutal as you need to be. Don't be unkind though, obviously.
Next up was Amir Safir from the Review of Religions, and he asked about the idea of bringing in younger people to handle video output for publishers.
I think the thing there is, absolutely, you get a lot from younger people who are digital natives who, have developed their video skills on phones. What I would say is, if you are trying to deliver a regular, consistent professional product that you maybe want to get sponsorship for, then you maybe need to make sure that is managed, is all. Because it's very easy to get excited about what you can do in video edits. and do some really crazy, amazing stuff that looks brilliant. But then when you're trying to deliver for a client who maybe is sponsoring your video podcast, sat slightly back from it. So I think there's a fine line, absolutely. But no, I've seen loads of stuff from people who are much younger than me that's better than I could do, which I don't find in any way worrying or depressing. It's fun.
The final questions came from Nikki Simpson of the International Magazine Centre. She asked for a couple of quick tips on improving thumbnails and taking inspiration from Jeremy Clarkson when it comes to your voice and hosting a show.
Thumbnail, strong image, essentially 5 words or less. Don't have, I'll give you 6 words if you've got the most amazing sentence in the world, but 5 or 6 words and a really strong image that essentially tells the story. Some thumbnails have no words at all on them now, but the imagery tells the story. It is worth spending time on your thumbnail, developing those, selling the story. And in terms of the Jeremy Clarkson voice, I'm sure people love or hate him. He's got a great voice. So when you are presenting, when you are talking, I'm sort of trying to do it now, where it's that sort of thing of when you go on camera, what you need to do is be the best version of yourself. And quite often, I do it by dropping my voice and sort of going, I'm here to talk about the best video podcasts in the world. You don't have to. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to do that. But what you do have to do is be clear and direct. And that is especially important at the start of your podcasts, when you're introducing it, when you're doing the hook, when you're creating a curiosity gap.
The big thing is that confidence thing. Show up as your best self.
Absolutely. Like me today.
If you want to know more about how publishers can make the most of video to grow both audiences and revenue, head over to crowdfindervideo.com or follow Simon Elliott on LinkedIn. And you can keep up with all things Media Voices by following us on LinkedIn and subscribing to the publisher newsletter over on voices.media.